Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hey, this is Mark Moyer with your Make Your Mark podcast, and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm super happy to have you wherever you're listening, whether it's here in New York, somewhere else in the United States, or anywhere else on this planet. Thanks for being here. And I'm super excited because I just finished chatting with Robert Hamilton Owens. And Rob is an amazing guy. This guy is 66 years old. And you know what he did last year? Something that only really a few people have done. He completed 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. That's the 777 Club. And there are very few members of it. Really an amazing story. He's finished several Ironman triathlons. He was a U.S. Air Force pararescue man. Just an incredible list of accomplishments and such a far-reaching interview. I mean, we covered so much ground. We talked about leadership and management training. We talked about really how to conquer a lot of your mental barriers to performance. A great episode. You're going to love it. But before we jump in, make sure you subscribe, whether it's on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. Jump in and subscribe. Also, I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think of this episode. Send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com. It's pretty easy. And also check out my website when you have a chance for access to all these great episodes of the Mark Moyer podcast, Make Your Mark podcast, that is. And also content on how to make your career jump a lot faster or your business grow. markmoyer.com is the website. But before you do all of that, listen to this episode. You're going to love it. Happy listening. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer. I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City, and I'm super, super thrilled to have Rob Hamilton Owens, hailing from the West Coast somewhere out there. Rob, say hello.
Hey, good to see you. How's the Big Apple?
Oh, Big Apple is actually not so bad today. It's yesterday, for New Year's Day, we had 58 degrees or something crazy, which never happens. But
wow, that's warm.
It'll bite us in the butt soon enough. And I heard that my cousin in Big Bear Lake said that it was 14 degrees yesterday there. So I guess it's
the best part about that is I would get up early in the morning and I would go snow skiing up Big Bear. And then I'd get down for the evening glass off and go surfing for the sunset. And so you could or ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon. So it's pretty fun out here, as you know, since you lived here.
It is amazing. You know, I didn't do it at Big Bear. I skied at Mount Baldy back when that mountain was still being formed back in the 1820s. I don't know when it was. But anyway, well, look, I'm super thrilled to have you on board. And the reason you're on this podcast, I mean, look, you certainly have the credentials to be on it and so on, but we're both associated with a book. And why don't we put in the plug now, way at this very start? We both were in Standing Out. That's
there
right.
You go.
And Scott MacGregor, you're the man that got us together.
You're the bomb.
This is an amazing book for any of you out there who are listening and or watching to buy. It's a collection of essays that really talk about the people that have been great influences in our life. And it turns out I used my mom, but I'd love to hear a little bit more, Robert, about the subject of your story, if you could.
Just, I've always had, fortunately, people that have been encouragers in my life. And mainly it was coaches. And when I was just a knucklehead, there were people that would get me back on track and say, hey, listen, you don't want to do that. You want to do this, stay on track. And then believe you can do what most people think you can't believe in doing. And so it was always pretty much a series of coaches. And then I had a sergeant in the military who just turned me into a man real quick. And so I've had people in my life that like many people, you wouldn't be where you are today if they hadn't intervened and spoken life and spoken correction, and impacted my life, changed it.
Well, and what's interesting is that the book came out as a way to drive some much needed help towards a couple of charities. But I have to tell you that it really helped me quite a bit, really look back and understand what was a major influence in my life. And I thought the book was a great project. So I'm delighted that we were able to get together this way. I love your story from soup to nuts. It's an amazing ride, an amazing journey that you've had. But before we get to the end of the journey, or I guess there's no end to this journey, but I'm saying where we are now, I'd love to take a sort of big step back to, really what got you going with all this in your childhood. Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up and what, your parents, et cetera.
Sure. I think I mentioned to you earlier that I'm an adopted kid. Back at the end of the Korean War, lots of babies, lots of guys coming home from war. Whenever guys come home from war, there's lots of babies.
Right.
And so somebody, I could say I was someone's mistake, and they put me in what's called the Children's Home Society. And that's a organization at that time that was connected to a Catholic hospital.
Okay.
And they put me in there, and my mom and dad could not have kids. So they went down and got a girl. And then 4 years later, they came back, got a boy. And what was nice is that I was a special needs kind of a kid because I had bent legs, bent feet. And so they had a choice of picking a normal kid or a kid back then that we didn't call them special needs. We called them handicapped.
Right.
And I was not real handicapped. I was just, my knees were all bent in where I couldn't run. So they got me some corrective shoes, and off started that whole thing of trying to figure out who I was, where I fit. And I remember I had a little friend who I went all the way through high school with. In third grade, he said, "Don't you know you're a mistake? Your parents didn't want you." And I remember going home and asking my mom, saying, "Am I a mistake?" And they said, "No, you go back and tell him we got to choose you. They got stuck with him."
That's a great answer. I love
so
that.
I went back and said, "Your parents got stuck with you. My parents got to choose me." I felt much better in third grade. And it's funny, I can remember exactly where I was standing in the street when that conversation happened in third grade. I mean, today it's like one of those moments in your life, But from then, just growing up being somewhat average in a non-average house. I mentioned to you that my dad was Mensa. And so he was Stanford undergrad 4.0, Stanford graduate law school 4.0, and then FBI, and then war crimes prosecuting attorney in the war crimes in Manila.
Wow.
You say, "Dad, what did you do?" And he said, "Well, we hung him." And so he was one of those guys. My mom was a 4.0 out of UCLA and Wellesley, and my sister was a 4.0 out of USC. And I didn't really like academics. And so I graduated from high school maybe with a 2.0 because the coaches kept me eligible. I was too busy surfing and running around doing crazy things and skiing and just being a water guy. And I was a disappointment to many who thought that I had much more in me than I was giving. And so my part about this is that I think there's a lot of people out there who wish they could do more, want to do more, and don't believe in themselves that they can. And so that's somewhat my story of finding out that I can.
Oh, that's amazing. It's funny that you mentioned the corrective shoes. I actually wore corrective shoes when I was, sort of 5 to 9, somewhere in there when I was a young kid. And, I was never allowed to wear sneakers and for all those years. And, looking back, kind of forgotten about it actually. But back then, that's sort of the way people straightened things out. And I used to remember trying to play soccer or whatever it was, or anything, kickball or something, and walking around these big clodhopper things that. I had the same thing. I was only allowed to wear Chuck Taylor high tops on Friday if I was a good kid. And so, were you ever a good kid or not?
No. First through sixth grade was those big brown high top boots that steel things in them,
Yeah. And it's, I'm sure we both then kind of caught some grief over the course of time by wearing those things. But, I think we're all the better for it now. I think my posture is probably better. At least my legs are better. I don't know. Yeah, I know yours are.
Yeah, I stand up better. I stand up straight now. But I remember, like they'd be playing kickball, and the teacher would have to sort of referee the teams. Like, okay, you guys pick teams. And then I would be the last kid picked. And I remember the teacher said, okay, you go to that team. And I remember the guy going, do we have to take him?
Oh, man.
And I went, this is not good. So, a lot of folks work through issues because everybody has issues of some sort. There's no perfect person or perfect family. And you just got to figure out how to win and take those issues on.
Well, look, you're absolutely right. And it's funny because you'll find that sometimes the greatest motivation for people, unfortunately, is to prove other people wrong, not necessarily to prove yourself right, but other people wrong. And it can be a very strong motivator, I suppose, but it's too bad it has to come to that. Now, you've had really an incredible life and an incredible, I guess we'd call it a career, but it seems like you've been doing what you love doing for a long time. And you had an amazing year last year, which we'll talk about in a minute. But tell me a little. We spoke earlier about becoming a lifeguard. Tell me a little bit. That I love that story. Tell me that story if you could.
I was a water polo swimmer, and in my area I went to Anaheim High School, which is Orange County.
Yeah.
All the guys on my team, they either lifeguarded Huntington, or Newport, or Laguna, or San Clemente.
Okay.
And the guys that I hung with of my water polo team, they all worked at San Clemente. And so they were juniors and seniors, and tryouts came at the end of my sophomore year. And I was a young guy, not an older student, but a younger student for my grade. And they only hired 16-year-olds and above. And I was only 15 and a half. And so I knew the area because I'd surfed it. And I'd been down there with my family and stuff. And so when they said, hey, Robert, you're too young to try out, I said, okay. And I thought, I just want to go down there and I want to see if I can compete because maybe it'll work for the next year. So I went down the pier and I looked at the tides and I studied all the currents and everything and began to train running soft sand and just trying to say, okay, I'm going to go down to 15 and a half and see if I can hang with these UCI swimmers,
right?
UCLA and San Diego State and Chapman and then the high school kids. And the morning of the event, it was a cold, foggy, damp, wet winter morning. And so about 50, 60 of us lined up, and I said, I want to try out. And they said, sure, knock yourself out. You're too young, but, hop in the water. So as it turned out, there were 3 events and I won 2 and I got a 3rd in the other one. And people were just unbelievably amazed that here was a 15 and a half-year-old beating everybody. And it wasn't because I was a better swimmer. It was because I outsmarted them and I watched the current and I knew what was going to happen when I had to swim towards that orange buoy at the end of the pier. And I body surfed past the swimmers that were faster than me. I passed them all up and got off on the beach first. And so with that, then the city said, we were going to interview you. You got the first popsicle stick with the 1 on it. And so I went in and they said, you're too young. And I said, I know, I just want to see if I could do it. And they said, how'd you do this? And I said, I came down here and trained to figure out how to beat faster swimmers. And so they said, okay, we'll see you next year. And I got a phone call that week from the lifeguard chief saying, we've gone to the city manager and we've asked for a waiver for you. We'd like to hire you, even though you're underage, because of what you've just accomplished. No one thought you could do that. And I became the only 15 and a half-year-old in the city's history ever hired. And when I went back to my water polo coach, which was John Urbanchek, who ended up being the U.S. Olympic swimming coach, I told him that the hard work ethic that he had instilled in us of find a way to win versus just because some guy's faster than you or has more talent, you doesn't mean you can't smoke him or you can stay with him. So that was the story and the beginning of my thought on I may not be the smartest, the handsomest, most gifted, but if I outsmart and outwork somebody, I can beat talent. And that's been sort of a theme since I was 15.
That's amazing. Because I have to think that, as you said, it really framed your mind and it made you realize for the rest of your life that you've been able to overcome all kinds of obstacles just because of that, where you see an obstacle and you say, you know what, for others, that might be a giant obstacle, but for me, it's just something that's in the way and I'm going to get around it. I'm assuming.
Yeah. Just how can I pull this thing apart and find out that I can compete? It looks daunting, but there's others that have done it. And I think if I put my mind to it, I can attack this thing and find a way to win. And that's what happened in special ops. Again, you want to go in the special ops military. You're not the fastest, you're not the strongest, you're not the biggest. I mean, I graduated from high school at 5'11", 155 pounds. So I was a thin guy. Now I'm 6 foot, 185. But back then, you needed size and stuff, and I didn't have any of the qualifications.
What compelled you to consider the military? What was it that you woke up one day and said, you know what, I'm joining, or what triggered that?
In those days, the Navy SEALs came by the lifeguard department and said, we're looking for watermen.
Oh, interesting.
And then they would say, the lifeguard department would say, wait a minute, because the pararescue guys from the Air Force were coming in too. And so you'd hear the pitch. Do you want to be a Navy SEAL, or do you want to be a pararescue guy, which is one's offense, one's defense? And so in my area, it was interesting. Like 4 guys became Navy SEALs and 4 guys became like pararescuemen. And I hung out and got drunk and, partied, was a wild kid with the pararescue guys. They were lifeguards who were pararescue. Okay. And they were reservists. And so they would work out of Riverside as a reserve unit. Then they'd go off and do their stuff and come back, and then lifeguard whenever they could. And they impacted my life and just said, hey, you can do this. And I said, how? And they said, if we did it, you can do it. And they gave me a regimen on how to train for this thing. And so once I set my mind again on what's it going to do to figure this puzzle out, spent about 7 months training, getting ready to then go in. And I trained in fear like we all do, because you just don't know what to expect. Right. And you hear the stories and you don't want to be ashamed and you don't want to be driven out. So you just train. Go ahead.
Now, because many people, they've heard, look, there's TV shows about the Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs are sort of everywhere. Everybody's heard of them. People have not, the exposure for the pararescuemen is not there, but I've heard SEALs say, look, those guys are pararescue, and they've got they're bad, they're good. And
what's fun is when I'm around a group, I say to a Navy SEAL, that guy doesn't know what a pararescueman is. He's asking me to explain it. Why don't you tell him who I am? And it's always fun to have an Army Ranger or a Navy SEAL explain what we do, because it's our job to save them.
Of course. I know. That's great. They save our asses. That's great.
When I was in, there was 200 of us and there was 3,000 Navy SEALs. Wow. So we're the smallest of the special ops groups, and it's fun.
Give me with, I don't know how much you can or can't say, but give me a sample, or give me one instance of something that you did as a pararescueman that really stands out as something that you thought was pretty challenging and pretty tough to pull off, but you're really excited that it went well.
I'll give you 2. One, there had never been a winter ascent of Mount McKinley or Denali. And so for a training exercise, we flew up there and was dropped off in a 182 on Hilton Glacier at about 10,000 feet in January at 20 below zero, and 3 of us tried to ascend Mount McKinley, and we got to 14.3, which is called Windy Corner, and it was blowing about 80 miles an hour at 20 below zero, and we got blown off the mountain. And so it was a nice training experience to dig your ice caves and to snowshoe up and then cramp on up and do your climbing, fall into crevasses, all that stuff, and then get off the mountain alive. That was fun. Another one was there was a hang glider, and I did most of my time in Alaska, and there was a hang glider who had climbed Mount McKinley and jumped off Mount McKinley with his hang glider.
Wow. And
he hang glided all the way down. So he was the most famous guy in Alaska. And one Sunday afternoon, I got a call. I was on duty. I got a call that there was a rescue. And when I finally got to the rescue, it was this guy. And this guy had jumped off a cliff, and the air had come and taken him back into the cliff. He had downdraft. Okay. And he jumped in, hit the cliff, and slid down. And when I got to him, he had a broken back and a broken neck, and he was tangled in some bushes. And I got to him, and I said, "Hey, all good. We're going to make it. Everything's going to be great." And he was really in bad shape. And I had to lie because I had to say, all's good. And it was not a good situation. He looked like he was going to die. So when he finally died in my arms, I gave him mouth to mouth, where he threw up all this blood into my throat. And I tried to clear his throat, tried to get him to breathe, but he was gone. And it was a bizarre thing to then call and say, if you guys had got me here 20 minutes earlier, I could have saved this guy's life. But you were dicking around with the Army and trying to figure out who had the airspace and who's going to go in, an Army guy or an Air Force guy. And this guy died because of all this commotion where you didn't have clear rules on engagement. And I put lots of guys in body bags. So you learn a lot about life and mortality, and you save some, and their families and kids say, "Thank you so much."
Right. Well, it's such a.
I delivered my first baby at 24 in the back of a helicopter.
Did you really?
Yeah. This lady I said, "Cross your legs, ma'am. I just got to get to the hospital." And she just spread those things apart and said, "Here it comes." And that little kid starts crowning. And I'm on the thing with my helmet on. I go, "Captain, we're having a baby." And he goes, "Good, Rook, you're on your own."
Yeah.
Rookie,
Can't help you.
Yeah. And all of a sudden there's blood all over the back of the helicopter. He says, "We'll get a hose." We get down, and you pull the placenta, you wrap her up, and you get this kid, you do the whole thing, and you're 25 years old, and you go, "Wow, that's intense." So you learn a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, I can imagine. Did the mother name the baby after you? I think, aren't they supposed to do that?
Yeah, she named her baby PJ probably. But that's the nickname for pararescue.
Gotcha. That's cool. Now, so you were part of this pararescue team. At what point did you start saying, "Look, I'm going to start doing some really crazy exercises. I'm going to do some Ironman. I'm going to do what point in your life did you start pivoting around to really these, I would almost call them, sort of extreme competition, right? I mean,
what happened was I got out of the military and I was bored, and I'm in college, and I pick up the real famous 1979 Sports Illustrated article that writes about this crazy event in Honolulu called an Ironman. And the article was on year 2. And so when I read that thing, I said, swim, bike, run, I can do that. And so I thought, I just read it, and then I read it again, and then I read it again, and I just thought, I got to do this. And so I said, I'm going to try this. So from the next day, I started training, and that was in August for a January event. I just didn't tell anybody. I just said, what are you doing? I got a thing I want to do. And then I'd take out that magazine and let them read the magazine, and they go, "No way." Because at that time, it was the most extreme endurance sport in the world. And it wasn't even a sport hardly. It was a triathlon, which was brand new, but it was this extreme deal. And so when they said this is the toughest endurance event in the world, being a pararescue guy or a Navy SEAL, you just go, and it was a bunch of Navy guys too that started this thing. You go, I got to get in this. And so I naively took my pararescue training and started training and showed up in Honolulu for year number 3. There was 100 of us. And today there's only, I think, 2 of us left that are still competing that have done Honolulu and done Kona. So all the other Honolulu guys are either dead or retired. But there's 2 of us left who have done it, and we're still competing. And so we claim that, we've been in this thing a lot longer than most of you guys. But anyway, you do the Honolulu race, and it is nuts, and you pass out, and you get back up, and you finish the thing. And then you go home and say, that was wild. And you go, I sort of like that. I can swim and bike and run in one day. And so that started it. And then I took 20 years off and had 5 kids, and really want to focus on those kids. But then my kid, my one mouthy firstborn son says, "Hey, you're pretty old, aren't you, at 50?" And I go, "What? You punk?" And he goes, "God, Dad, that's really old." And so I thought, I think I'll make a comeback and put these kids at the finish line. And so I did one at 50, and then I found I liked it. I thought, hey, this was fun. So I started doing them every year after that.
That's amazing. So tell me about, so you're doing these Ironmans, but what was keeping you busy in between them? I mean, you obviously needed to be a pretty engaged kind of guy. What was keeping you busy for those years, for the most part?
I was a business consultant for companies.
Yep. Good.
People would hire me to come in and help solve problems. They said, "You still solve or train people?" I like, "You mean like train guys?" Yeah. What do you want? What do you need trained in? Well, come in and look at my staff and come in and talk and inspire, and then tell me what you think. And I'd say, okay. So, 10 people graduate to 15 to 20 to 50 to 100. And pretty soon, I'd fire these guys. I'd keep these guys. I'd spend more budget over here. And I give you a year to make it or else you're dead in the water, blah, blah, blah. And they'd say, thanks. They'd pay me some money. On the other hand, I was also a senior pastor. And so after putting a bunch of guys in body bags, I had this epiphany that I needed to help messed up kids like me. And so I went to the University of Nevada and went to the athletic director and said, "Man, you got a bunch of guys going to jail off the football team. You got some wild football players here. You want some help?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "All right. But if you ever need some help, you're losing a lot of scholarship guys." And so he said, "Well, I got this one quarterback. He's such a disappointment." So I said, "Sweet, throw me a bone, introduce me." So I met this quarterback and I really liked him. I said, "God, you're screwed up. You're a great kid." And so, I saw myself in him, and pretty soon I had 15 starters in my living room, and pretty soon I had 50 kids. And all of a sudden I was doing this campus thing at the University of Nevada. And pretty soon I became the chaplain for the university for football, baseball, basketball, worked with kids. And then they wanted to get married. So I started marrying them. And pretty soon I had this non-denominational church with a bunch of Catholics and some Protestants and clueless people and dope smokers and everything. If you have issues, show up, we'll talk. And I did that for 23 years. And I was much better a business consultant than I was a pastor, because I'd say to folks, "What's your issue? Get over it." And they'd say, "Where's your compassion?" I go, "Where's your stupidity? How long are you going to wear that poopy diaper? You had it on for 20 years. Why don't you deal with your stuff and get over it and move on?" And they'd say, "You don't sound really sweet." And I said, "Well, I'm a special ops pastor, deal with your stuff or go down the street. Somebody else will like to take care of you." It's funny.
Special ops pastor. That's great. Because, what's funny is that people often ask me, "Mark, are you a life coach?" I'm like, "Oh God, no." I'm a little bit like you, Rob, where I try to help people through things, but I kind of say, look, suck it up and deal with it, dude. It's you got a whole lot going for yourself to be whining about whatever it is. And they say the same thing to me, that, they'll say, "Geez, shouldn't I be, getting some sort of therapy or something?" I'm like, "Why? Just to make a therapist rich? Come on. No, you just,
especially in the city, everybody's got a therapist."
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
I go back there and I tell these folks, you're paying for that. You're paying for that. You're paying for that. These guys are making bank on you. Why don't you just deal with your stuff and you could save a bunch of money? I could get you through this real quick if you want. And they don't ever call me. I need to talk to my therapist.
Yeah. Well, I'm in that boat, so I'm with you on that. Well, look, I guess I should have. It's interesting that you mentioned all that stuff about being a pastor and so forth, because number one, I guess you wouldn't. I guess I wouldn't see that in you necessarily, but I like that about you, because I think sometimes it's not a bad thing to get kind of read the riot act a little bit and sort of get slapped back into reality. But I don't think you were slapping people, but verbally maybe a little bit.
I wanted to help people.
Right.
And I wanted to help people change and grow and find wins in their life. But sometimes people would rather have an old enemy than a new friend, because people like the lay of the land. It's risky to venture out into something new. So I'd rather stay miserable and complain than really change. I'd rather be with these friends who ruined my life because I like them and I've known them all my life versus change them and lose the emotional pain of change. And people like myself, nobody does well with change. But the only thing that you know is that life has change to it, and you can either adapt or fall behind. And so growth is challenging. You can struggle forward or you can struggle going backwards, but life is a struggle. So you got to choose how you want to struggle,
That's brilliant. And it's so true, especially when you are consulting like you do for a business or doing any sort of coaching, business coaching, consulting, et cetera. Some of the work that I do, I think that it's all about, when we're doing something ourselves, we see everything through our own lens and we don't necessarily see how things look on the other side. And I think there's a tendency for a lot of us to feel that the world might end if certain things don't happen, we do. And then at the end of the day, the world doesn't give a flying crap, right? They don't. And we're just building everything up inside of us. And we don't, sometimes the biggest hurdles are just getting out of our own way. Right. That's it. And, I think that's, going back towards when you were training for the Ironman and doing a lot of the work that you did, that, it's really so much more of your mental fortitude than it is the physical side.
I find I get asked to speak a lot on mental toughness, developing mental strength, tenacity. And there's an interesting thing, just a side note for the listeners. There's a book out by a guy named Matt Fitzgerald called How Bad Do You Want It? He's a Sports Illustrated writer, triathlete guy, Triathlete magazine. Anyway, it's a PhD thesis on the chemicals that are released in your brain from physical pain being different than the chemicals being released in your brain from mental pain.
Interesting. Oh.
And the deal is you'll give up mentally before you'll give up physically. And so the training that it takes to get through the walls in life, whether it be physical or emotional or mental or relational, how you get through pain or you run from pain is a whole nother topic. And so when I work with folks, I say, what's your pain? Is it monetary? Is it relational? Is it emotional? What is your pain that's got you in a box? Is it your employees? You don't have to deal with them? Is it the C-level folks above you that you can't seem to relate to? And then we start pulling apart pain and try to give people wins. And it's just a trip. And if you do physical things, it gives you strength to learn how to handle other types of issues. So that's just, for me, I train folks, if you can get some wins physically, you will not give up in other areas as much when you get physical wins.
Absolutely.
It's a pattern that you develop inside.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because something I've always tried to teach people is that I think many people focus on winning the war. And I try to say, look, just one little battle, one little micro wins, micro victories here and there, all build towards that big win. And yes, we've heard, winning the battle, but it's something where it's so very true. You just get the littlest of commitments, the littlest of little victories, and they start, they accumulate in your mind, and you build the confidence back up. And it's
I used to say it this way. I used to say to folks when I'd be communicating sort of mass-wise radio show or TV show or something, did you get your win today? Mm-hmm. Every day you ought to have a win. And if you programmed a win, one less cigarette, one less calorie, one less anger issue, did you just get a win today? Because habits develop habits, and wins give confidence for more wins. So as you just said, it's those little steps every day to say no to something, to say yes to something. Did you get your win today? And I can't tell you how many people have come back and they email me or they Facebook me and they say, I'm getting my win. I got a win. I thought through 5 wins for 5 days this week. I worked on these wins, and I'm gaining confidence because that which used to be impossible, just, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time, and you just begin to whittle away at stuff. And it's great.
Well, you know what? It's really food for thought, because, one of the things I like to do is on a daily basis, I tend to have, look, I speak to lots of people, but I consider it a win when I have some nice aha moments with my clients or anybody I'm speaking with. And to me, I think it's a great idea to schedule calls that will likely lead to a win, because then it's going to really set the stage for a lot of the rest of your day. And whether it's a call or as you said, an act, whether it's, again, it could be eating one less calorie, like you said, or one less cigarette, whatever it is. If you can schedule that into your day where you know you're going to guarantee yourself a win, I think that'd be great. That's throw that into the old. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I know this is probably not politically correct for the city, for the Big Apple, but like sometimes I'll just see some lady who just really looks together, and I'll open the door for her, and she'll look at me like I could open my own door, and I go, I know, I just want to open the door for you, and they just look, and I get the win, because being polite or kind or giving is a win whether somebody likes it or not, because it's a win for me to win at just doing it, watching their face. So sometimes, I'll pay for somebody's meal. Somebody will be sitting down, cashier, I'll just pay for that. Now, why? Because that single mom needs to have a win today. Yeah. And somebody cares that she's struggling. And you can just plan acts of kindness that build wins for you, and they may get it or they may not get it. But it's every day, what am I going to do today? Is it with money or with a smile, or is it with an act? How am I going to get that win today where I feel better about it? And it's fun.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, now listen, I want to shift into something else, because this is something we need to talk about. 777, and what on earth made you think that this was something you had to do? So I'm going to let you explain what 777 is, and what made last year such a crazy year for you, crazy good year for you.
Going back to that average thing.
Yeah.
What does average look like? It limits what we think we can do. And if you get wins in overcoming expectations of you shouldn't, you can't, why you, if you do that, then when you get into your 60s like me, it's like, okay, they say you're old. And I say, okay. And so then I say, how can I put this in their face? Or how does this work? So for my 65th, 66th birthday, how to get a win for me, I just said, I want to do something audacious. I want to do something legendary and epic. I'm not LeBron. I'm not Kobe. I'm a nobody. But in my own little world, I want to do something that people go, no way. And I go, I think at 65 years old, it'd be fun to have a win, because I've never had a big athletic win, So I scheduled 5 events, and I trained 2.5 years for them. Every morning at 4:30, 5 days a week, get up, do about a 3-hour workout. So by 8 o'clock, I could be done. And I scheduled these events. They just sort of came about. One was 238 miles across Greece in 8 days, trying to do King Leonidas from the movie 300. We tried to reenact from Sparta to Thermopylae, where those guys died, as a Navy SEAL fundraiser. And when I heard there was a Navy SEAL fundraiser for the guys that died in Benghazi, I said, I want in. I want to help raise money for special ops guys. Yeah. But I wonder if we could do this 238 miles in 8 days, as the legend said King Leonidas did it. Second of all, this guy came up to me and said, hey, you're old, but I hear you've been training. Would you like to do this lifeguard thing that we do? It's a memorial for all the beach lifeguards that died in Orange County rescuing people. Okay. And I said, sure, what is it? It's running from the San Clemente Pier to the Newport Pier. Okay. And it's a run, swim, run, swim, run, swim. When you can't run, you swim.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a marathon of nonstop swimming and running from San Clemente to Newport. And they said, you'd be the oldest guy by 30 years to have ever attempted this, but you look like you're in shape. And I said, all right. So I went out with all these kids and did this marathon, 9-hour marathon of running and swimming, running, swimming. I went, that was really stupid. I should never have done that. Anyway, I survived that. So I'm the oldest guy across Greece doing this thing. I'm the oldest guy doing this thing. And then there's this Navy SEAL thing called Kokoro. And if you go to sealfit.com, there's a guy that did a CrossFit gym specifically to train Navy SEAL candidates that before they go in the Navy, if you could pass his training, he had a 99% success rate once you got in the Navy. So he's a Navy SEAL officer retired who the Navy said, can you help us get these kids in shape before they come in? So he has a bunch of events, but one of them is a 50-hour nonstop Navy SEAL thing with Navy SEAL instructors.
Okay.
And so they said, you can't do that. You're old. And I said, okay. So I trained for the 2.5 years, and I'm now the oldest guy to ever finish that. And it was the worst thing I think I've ever gone through in my life, but it was a huge milestone because it was a strength thing. It had to be strength with endurance. And I wanted to see if you could do strength and endurance because I'm just a swim, bike, run. I'm not a strong guy.
Right.
So that was that win. Then I said, I won't even train for my next Ironman. So 3 weeks later, just did an Ironman for the heck of it because I was already in such shape. And then the big dog, which everyone talks about, is the World Marathon Challenge, which was 6 weeks after that. That's 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And again, I'm not a runner. I mean, I can run, but I'm not a runner. These guys are runners, and they know how to run. Like our U.S. Olympian in Brazil Games, he did it the year before me, and he got 5th place. Our U.S. marathoner got 5th place. And the endurance guys smoked him. And there was 5 guys the year before me that did 7 marathons in 7 days, every one of them under 3 hours.
Wow.
You imagine that?
No, I can't.
7 sub-3s in a row of sleeping and running and sleeping and running. Anyway, so I wanted to see if I could do it, be an old American in this thing, and so knock that out. And you'd say, what's the point? Well, I want to celebrate 65, 66. I wanted to see if I could get stronger as I got older. Most people get weaker as they get older.
Right.
And I wanted to see if, as I age, as a senior, can I get stronger as I get older and not lose my tensile strength? And so it was just sort of an experiment where I got to experiment on myself to see if, as a senior, I could get wins and I could overcome being average by being a hardworking guy that was smart, programmed, ate right, slept right, got mentors, found the right role models, listened to them, and then found a way to win. So it was a real fun year. And now when I speak and talk, I talk to folks who are like, you can do a lot of things. It's just you have to have a mindset of focus and a mindset of cost and a mindset of pain. Am I willing to go through this stuff? And if you are, you can do a lot more than you think you can.
Well, you bring up a great point because, you talk about some of the coaching that you do in the business, the advisory stuff, consulting. One of the things I'm curious about is, sometimes people, and myself included, maybe yourself included at some point, sometimes like if I have something that's coming up that I have to do, but I just don't want to do it and I procrastinate, I push it off. And it ends up being, a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. That's just the way it happens. But, I'm curious about when you were doing the 777, was there a point, maybe day 3 or 4, where you said, you know what, this is nuts? Or was it more like, because I'm at 3 and 4 now, I can easily push through this? Like I get your point. For the listeners, the whole thing was nuts. The first one is the Antarctic Marathon. Okay.
And I didn't know how to dress. So I took 3 different jackets and 3 different sets of pants and different size shoes and blah, blah, blah. And so when you're running at, 20 below zero with winds blowing where you can't see the competitor, the guy in front of you can't see his feet because like he steps into blowing snow. It's all blowing sideways. You can see everything from his knees down, or from his knees up, but you can't see it from his knees down. It just goes into a cloud of snow that's blowing sideways. It's like, this is so cold. What am I doing here? And there were times when you had to run into the wind and my face was just frozen like a lot of the other folks. And so it was like, I don't know what I was thinking to put myself out here in this. And I just got to get off the course. I just got to keep running to get off the course. It's not like this is fun. if I just keep running, I can get done with this thing and get into a warm shed somewhere.
Wait, you weren't looking around going, oh, look at the penguins. Oh, look at that. You're like, get me the hell out of here.
I'm looking straight down. I got things pulled over my face. My hands are all bent up like this. They're frozen. I'm running like this, you know. And you see all these different people running in these different ways, like we're all freezing. But then you have to turn around and get on a plane immediately,
right,
and fly back to Cape Town and run. So you do 2 marathons within the first 24 hours. So as soon as you get off the plane in Cape Town, you start again. But in Cape Town, it was 90 above. So you go from that low temperature, and then your feet swell on the airplane. Then you get off and you get in that heat. And what happens is whenever the plane lands, that's when you start running. So it's whether day or night. Whenever the plane lands, you're going to start running because you got to get back on the plane and get to the next country, next continent. So that thing just happened. We had to start at 12 in the afternoon in the middle of the day and run in the heat of the day, this 90-degree thing along the beach. And everybody's feet blew up. They blew up with blisters. I was fortunate because I'd blown my feet up in Greece on the 238 miles. So I had learned to bring 4 different pairs of shoes, 4 different sizes, because I knew my feet were going to blow up.
Wow.
So I started off in a size 11 and a half, and I finished in about size 13 and a half.
Wow.
And so your feet just keep expanding every day from the pressure and the flying and the stuff. Anyway, so your question was there ever a day? From the moment I got off the plane in Antarctica, I went, I thought I figured this out, but I didn't figure it out. And all of us were looking at each other going, this is going to be bizarre. But the most fun was day number 5. And that was in Cartagena, Colombia. We'd made a flight from Lisbon all the way. So you got a good sleep.
Sure.
And you got down there and it was Super Bowl Sunday. And so we got going about 4 in the afternoon, and that'd be like Miami time. And we started doing laps, and we had to do all these laps. But part of the laps were we had to run through a bar area. And the bar area, restaurant bars, all had TVs, and they all had soccer. But one bar at the very end had the Super Bowl on. And as you could run by, you could slow down and look inside and see what the score was. So I saw the first quarter as I ran by, in the second quarter, third. So finally, when it got down to like the middle of the third quarter, I said, I'm going to quit the marathon. I'm going inside and I'm going to watch the rest of the Super Bowl. So I'm sweaty, no shirt. I got a bib number on, you know. I just pull off into this bar off the course, and I take a knee, and I'm just watching this game. And I watch the whole deal where Brady doesn't make it and the Eagles win and stuff. And I turn around, and there's like 7 American marathoners. We've all got in this bar and we're all watching the Super Bowl. And then we go, oh crap, we got to go finish this marathon. So we went outside the bar and high-fived and started running our marathon again. That was amazing. Pretty fun.
Now, how many people are doing this at the same time? How many participants were there?
This year there were 15 women and 45 guys, and all but one made it. One got real sick between Cape Town and Dubai. Melbourne stuff, got real sick and had to be taken off and hospitalized.
Wow. So, and did you all need to finish? I'm assuming you all had to finish within whatever, 5 hours, I guess, or something? Or
no,
what was
they give you 8 hours.
Oh, okay, good.
Which almost anybody can walk fast and make 8 hours.
Right. So
what happened, the guy that really won the whole thing was a guy with Parkinson's.
Wow.
He's in New York City. His name is Brett, B-R-E-T, Parker. He's the president of the New York Bar Association downtown.
No kidding.
So he's an attorney. And he said, I'm not going to let Parkinson's knock me out. I'm going to compete. And so he dragged his leg for 7 marathons. Mm. And when we all finished, we all just looked at him and said, dude, you are the winner here, because he was in last place and he never, ever quit. And he said, I'm going to do this to prove that Michael J. Fox, the foundation, we Parkinson's people, we never quit. And it was so inspirational. I cried. There was like 25 people that flew down from New York City, all wearing his T-shirt, Brett Parker team, and they all did the marathon with him.
Wow.
It was so inspirational.
That's amazing. So you've done all these obviously these physical and mental accomplishments. Give me I'd love to hear from you maybe a couple of other, tips that you can give people that are maybe going through some whether it's challenging times, like how do you overcome some, in your mind, aside from the get over it part of it, but some obstacles that are in front of you? What are some of your ideas and strategies on how to get past things and sort of get to the other side?
First of all, I always remind people that what they're going through is not unique to them. Somebody has already been through this: cancer, death, sickness, disease, hurt, disappointment. You feel all alone with your emotions, but if you venture out, you'll find people that will relate to you and say, I know your pain, and I can tell you how you're going to make it because I made it, or we made it. So the key, number one, is to get out of your little world, or if I was not a nice guy, I'd say your pity party. If I had the pastor hat on, I'd say, get out of your pain and be courageous. Be courageous and go look for help from people that might understand your situation. And most people don't want to be courageous enough. They'd rather sit and mope and replay the negativity in their brain every day versus looking for a positive way out. Because it takes courage to do that. And many people don't know how to have that kind of courage in that kind of pain.
Good.
Number one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Number two.
Number two, I would begin to write.
Oh.
There's something about chronicling what's going on, because a therapist oftentimes will say to you, write down your stuff, because your mind works so much faster than your ability. So when you're writing this stuff down, you're also processing in your head what you're writing, and you're thinking things that you haven't thought before that come to your mind. So writing is a real therapy tool for processing pain.
Well, what's interesting is I tell people to, when I prepare people on my career coaching side of things, when I prepare people for interviews, and I ask them to prepare by really anticipating what it is that the other person's going to want to hear from them, and going to ask them and find out what skill set's going to be most appropriate for that particular position. And I tell them to write it down. I say, look, when you handwrite something, you're going to keep it much more concise and to the point and really well thought out. The same thing goes for answers. When people are going to answer questions, if I ask you, Robert, tell me about yourself. Well, we might be here for another hour while you're telling me about yourself. But if I ask you to write that down, you ain't going to write down, you're going to write born, lived, ran, consulted, right, the end, or whatever. Right. So I think that's great. Writing down is absolutely, and unfortunately it's becoming a much more of a lost art, because people now, all they need to do is type things, right? And typing is not the same as writing down.
Or now they just speak into a voice thing and it records, But you don't get the therapy part. There's a therapy thing in writing. Third thing I'd probably say is I'd find a group of people where you can listen to them and also give back. One of the great ways to get over pain is by giving. And that's hard because you don't want to give when you're in pain. You want to receive, or you want to spiral and stay in your world. But if you can go and give to a kid, or give to a senior, or give to another cancer patient while you're going through your pain, that's why AA is so good, because you get with a group of people like you. And small group work with people with the same issues that you have bring much quicker healing, because they understand you. And they can help you process what you can't seem to process through, whether it's Al-Anon, Alateen, cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, support group stuff. There's someone that can help you. They say, I've been there before. Let me walk with you.
Absolutely right. That's brilliant. All right. We're shifting gears right now into a little segment I like to call Hit Your Mark. And it's just a couple of quick little questions and quick answers, and we'll see how you do on this one. Number one, first question is, out of all the different physical experiences you've gone through, whether it's been running, Ironman, etc., give me one that put the biggest smile on your face, whether it was winning a race or not winning or just completing it. What are you maybe most proud of?
I think in special ops training back in my 20s, I tried to hide an awful lot, meaning I kept my eyes down, didn't want to be seen, just shut up, don't want to be noticed, just scoot through. And I think having my sergeant come up to me and pull me aside and take me into his office and ask me why I'm hiding. And I said, because I don't want to talk to you. And he said, well, now you're stuck talking to me. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, you've got way more talent than you think that you've ever had. Don't know why you're insecure. You can do this. And now I need you to be a leader. And that probably, going from being so terrified that I wasn't going to cut it to having affirmation come, it sort of set the tone for everything after that, that I can do things. I didn't know, I was never able in high school to win anything because I was around really great athletes. But having somebody affirm you, who's the big man, like the sergeant, and say, you're a good kid, you can do more, dream big, don't dream small. It was like a life release for me that I was legit, that I all the other athletic achievements were not that. It was the mental thing of, I can do those athletic achievements, but liking myself and having someone affirm me that I can be in the game of life. It was just a win.
That's cool. All
and
right.
I think, and I said, just to say that everybody needs to be affirmed.
Well, yeah.
And we look at all kinds of places for it.
That's great. That's good. So do you own a boat by any chance? Any sort of a boat?
I don't.
All right. If you did, what would you call it?
Probably Sunset. I did sail across the Atlantic. And so I looked at a boat for a long time. We sailed from the Canary Islands down to Africa and over across in the British West Indies. There were 6 of us. And that's why I don't own a boat. What
I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, I know how to sail, but I don't want to own a boat, So,
Yeah,
but I like sunsets. I'd probably call it Sunset.
Okay, good.
Sorry, not very exciting.
No, it's not exciting, but the fact that you decided to ride, I mean, I'm a land guy, not a water guy. And, put me about 20 feet offshore and I'm pretty good out there. Maybe, I mean, I can go a little farther out and I can swim very well, but still I'm impressed with that. That to me is a greater accomplishment than the 777. I mean, I don't know, man. I just,
it's a bizarre deal to be like 2,000 miles offshore on either direction. And it's really deep down there. And then you have these big creatures come up underneath you,
Well, that's the thing. What I can't see is what bothers me, right?
Oh man, we're stuck with no wind, and it's super hot and it's glassy. And the guy who's captain of the boat says, "Why don't you go scrub the hull? I mean, there's nothing else to do. Why don't we just clean the hull? When the wind comes up, let's just have a clean hull to go faster." So at 3 or 4 of us, we jump in the water, in our Speedos, and we're just scrubbing the hull of the boat with scrubbers and stuff, And all of a sudden, this guy goes, "Get out of the water!" And what? And he goes, "Look!" And this huge dark shadow is coming towards us, huge. I'm on a 99-foot swan. It's the only 99-foot swan made in the world. And 99 feet seems like a long boat until you're out in the middle of nowhere, And then it's a pretty small boat. Anyway, I couldn't get to the ladder fast enough to try to get back on the boat. And as I'm crawling up the boat thinking a shark's going to eat me, we're all scrambling. We get up and this huge whale just goes and goes and as long almost it seems as the boat. And it was like, oh my God, and I just thought I was going to die. And so you have all kinds of these experiences, out there where the waves are so big, they're running from the North Pole down to the South Pole, and you're going east to west, but they're going north to south. And we had a 4 spar mast, meaning if you look at a mast, it's got the little things on it, going up.
Yeah.
Most of them only have 3. Okay. But we had 4, meaning that it was a really high mast, which means the bottom is really low. So it's your ballast thing, right? So we spent 3 days in a storm where when we were going east to west and they were going north to south, we'd be going up and down, driving down the middle. And our mast was inside the tube of the wave above us.
Wow.
And then we would come up the other side and we'd be looking, we could see for 20, 30 miles. And then it would be back down and you'd have a wall of water on both sides of you because you're down in the trough of that swell. And you'd go, oh my God. I mean, and then the flying fish would jump and they'd hit your mast and they'd just fall on the deck because they didn't make it from water to water. They just got stuck on the boat. So we had all these fish flip-flopping on our deck, and we did that for 3 days and nights where the mast was below the top of the wave. And then you go way back to the top, and you go way down the bottom again. And it was just like, I had the night shift, from 12 to 3 in the morning. And I'm steering, I'm steering the boat and I got to keep it on course. And I'm going up and down for hours on my watch, and it's pitch dark and you're going, this is Moby Dick stuff. This is crazy. And then you just sort of learn to get in it. And, that's why I don't own a boat. I'll sail in somebody else's, but
never mind. Maybe I should change that question to, tell me the name of your rocket ship or something. But anyway, all right, switching gears. One last question for you. I'm always curious to hear this. I like asking this question. Give me 3 people, alive or dead, that you'd love to share a beer with or lunch with. 3 people that you'd love to hang out with.
I would so enjoy having a lunch with Kobe Bryant. I would talk to him about training. He's the Black Mamba because of the style and the way that he trained. And nobody wanted to train like he did. And he had a coach, a trainer by the name of Tim Grover, who you ought to have on your podcast, who trained Michael Jordan and LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Kobe. And he was a specific trainer just for those guys.
Yeah.
Interesting guy. Tim Grover is all over YouTube. Okay. Number 2, I'd like to have probably a coffee with Colin Cowherd of Fox used to be with ESPN on The Herd.
Yeah.
I listen to him a lot. And so I'd like to pick his brain about some things. I've been following him way since Penn State scandal days before that, I've been listening to him.
Okay.
He's contemporary. He's not too far from me. And I'd probably like to have a good lunch with you and Scott MacGregor.
Oh, nice. It would Scott be a good MacGregor lunch.
of the Standing O.
That's right. The Standing O. Big plug.
Everybody needs to go buy the Standing O.
Definitely do that. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. I mean, it's, I like to showcase people that are clearly making their mark. That's the whole point of this podcast and what we're doing. And, it's, not only have you accomplished a whole lot, but I think what's important is that you're showing how these accomplishments, both physical, mental, and otherwise, can really be sort of showcased for others that can really benefit from them. And that's what I appreciate what you're doing. And so you keep on doing what keep up the great work. Any businesses out there, small, medium size, whatever size, they really should chase you down and find you. How can they reach you, by the way? What's the best way?
My website is my name. It's Robert Hamilton, like this play, RobertHamiltonOwens.com. And all my stuff's there. Yeah, if I can encourage a group or help with kids or, corporate stuff, call me. I do a lot of speaking. I've been speaking for years.
That's wonderful. Well, once again, thank you so much for being on. And I look forward to chatting with you more and more over, going forward. You're a super guy. You're a lot of fun. And I think you knew that already. And, I'll tell you more amazing stories of my time at the Olive Garden.
Mark was a waiter at the Olive Garden, everybody ought to know that.
One of the best ever. Yeah.
Mark, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
My pleasure. Thanks again. Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.